Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider Postgame Show. We're here live from the Caesars Superdome. Zach Ewing with you after the Saints' 30-27 preseason loss to the Tennessee Titans. The best news today, I can tell you, from my perspective, the preseason is over. We can start to talk about real football. Saints will be back here in 2 weeks to play the Carolina Panthers, but still some decisions to be made before then, and we're going to talk a lot about those over the next 30 minutes or so as we take you through the postgame. We'll be joined by some of the guys from the locker room, our NOLA.com columnists, Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker, beat writers Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris. We've got Jim Derry, the host of Datitude, here as well. And so we'll talk to some of them, get as many as we can in here over the next 30 minutes, and talk about what happened in the Saints' 30-27 preseason loss to the Tennessee Titans. Saints Insider Postgame Show is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. And with that said, we'll bring on Jim Derry. He is the host of Datitude. He's also a sports betting analyst for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. I'm going to move over here and let Jim have that half of the stage. And welcome in, Jim. Saints lose 30. Saints lose 30-27 in a game where the result really doesn't matter. I mean, we were kind of laughing at the end. They don't play overtime in NFL preseason games anymore, thankfully. So the Saints were actually driving for a tie there at the end. And it was just like there was just no drama at all.
We were trying to come up with reasons that was anything in this game that mattered at all. And the first thing you said was a joke, but I think maybe it is the number one truth is that it's obvious Blake Grupe has won the kicking position. Other than that, I don't think there's anything that we learned in this game. I know that the Rattler train, the Rattler fans out there will say, yeah, Spencer Rattler's number 2, but I still think that it's Jake Haener. I don't think either one did anything special today, and I thought that Haener had the number 2 spot almost locked up anyway. And other than that, no defensive starters except for Howden, and he may not even be a starter, played all that much.
The safety spot, Jordan Howden, Will Harris, Jonathan Abram all played. Trevor Penning and Tali Fuanga played on the offensive line for 20 snaps. And that was really about it. We'll talk about the kicking situation. I think that was probably answered for us today. But I do think we should talk Spencer Rattler. And I know you're leading the train of slowing down the hype train, if you will, on Spencer Rattler, like he's still a rookie. There are people out there who are saying he's challenging Derek Carr for the starting position. That is not
that's
the
absolutely
case.
not true.
That's loony.
That's not even close to true.
He's not. But I will say this was the best day Rattler had in a preseason game. He finished 7 of 13 for about 115 yards. I don't have his exact numbers in front of me, but he made a couple
less than that, but close.
Yeah, couple of good throws, a touchdown throw to A.T. Perry, and then a long throw to A.T. Perry. The touchdown throw was to Equimanius St. Brown. 2 really nice throws, although even the one to Perry was underthrown. Could have been a touchdown if it had been aired out properly. But, he did look good. He led most of the scoring drives today. Do you tick him up? How much do you tick him up in your book?
I thought the touchdown pass was the best pass of the game by anyone. Malik Willis actually had a pretty darn good pass as well. So that goes in his favor. But overall, he just didn't do anything. He got bailed out on that same drive. He threw the touchdown pass. He gets bailed out by defensive holding call, or the Saints would either have to punt or try a long field goal there anyway. And then he gets help on an offsides call that makes it 1st and 5 before he gets to, I think it was 2nd down when he threw the touchdown pass. So the pass to A.T. Perry that you're talking about was behind, I thought, A.T. Perry, a good pass, and it's a touchdown. They need to run it in there. So if you're asking my opinion, I still think that as far as long-term, if you want to talk about someone who has more of a chance to be an NFL quarterback and has more of an upside, it's Spencer Rattler. If you're talking about someone who I'd rather have in if I were the Saints and rather put in right now, if Carr were hurt for a short period of time, I'd rather it be Jake Haener. So that's kind of where I am right now. And let's be honest. If Derek Carr is going to be out for a long period of time, I would think they'd either go with a veteran or they'd be in a lot of trouble because neither one of these guys is ready to lead a team for a long period of time anyway.
Yeah, that's my takeaway too. I do think Jake Haener is probably QB2 still, but today, I'll admit today's the first time there was some doubt put in my mind. I thought Spencer Rattler legitimately looked more in control. He looked pretty good at times. Yeah, he didn't make every throw. Like, let's not get carried away, but there were some good moments.
Haener also threw a touchdown pass that was called back for a holding penalty that had nothing to do with the play, and no one's going to remember that. Had that been Rattler, they would have been rat training it up on Twitter. So let's get real.
Right.
I just don't think that. I honestly don't believe. Now ask me again next year, and it may be different. But I think right now, I don't think there's much difference between the two. I just don't.
Well, the Saints starters, for the most part, did not play in this one. Derek Carr was inactive. Chris Olave was inactive. Alvin Kamara, the big names on defense, Chase Young, Cam Jordan, Tyrann Mathieu, all of those guys were inactive. They did not play. They're getting ready for 2 weeks from now. The Titans, on the other hand, they did play plenty of starters the first couple of series, particularly on offense. We saw Will Levis out there. We saw Calvin Ridley.
Pollard.
We saw, Tony Pollard. We saw Tyler Boyd, some first-team offensive linemen. And quite honestly, they looked like a first-team offense should look against the Saints' second and third stringers on defense. Like they ripped right through them, especially on that first drive.
I think there's no question about that. And it tells you that, look, and I get that it's preseason and all, and it's first, ones against twos, but it shows you that the Saints don't have a ton of depth as good as their defense is. You got to be worried about where their depth is, and it's not a whole lot right now on either side of the football. So, someone posted that to me on X, and I said the Saints, one of the shorts that we wrote, I said the Saints could. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 games. I said they could win 10, they could win 6, or somewhere in between. And someone said I was crazy because of 10, because they don't have any depth. And I think that person is right about the depth part of it for sure.
Yeah, the depth is an issue at a lot of different spots. Here are some of the comments rolling in. Patrick A. Frazier says Rattler is ready now. He says he's our best option after Carr. And honestly, like Spencer Rattler may win the number 2 job. Like it's not. I don't think that's crazy. But I do think, knowing Dennis Allen, and he's a little bit more of a careful head coach, a little more conservative, I think Haener starts the year as the number 2 quarterback. We'll see.
I think that Dennis Allen has all but told you in press conferences, if you read through the lines, that his mind's been made up for 2 to 3 weeks. If you read through, he was specifically asked, have you made up your mind? And he said yes, and then he had to stop and kind of say, but blah, blah, blah. That was 2 weeks ago. And I think the fact, and I said this last week on my show, and I think even the week before, I thought whoever started this game, in my mind, because of what they've done, is the number 2 quarterback. Again, it doesn't really matter. So, we're splitting hairs here. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. But I think that Haener is the number 2 quarterback. I think Allen has made up his mind whether he should or shouldn't be, whether I think, you think, Joe Blow fan thinks out there. I think Dennis Allen has made up his mind that it's Haener. And we've talked about this before. No matter who it is, if Derek Carr gets hurt, this team is in a world of hurt.
Rattler may have made the race closer today, but you have to remember this is just one of 3 preseason games plus 22 practices they've had since late July, 18 of them out in Irvine and 4 here in New Orleans. And these coaches are seeing a lot more than any of us are in the preseason games and even in some of the practices. So Hakeem says a hard watch, but Rattler had a few drops by his receivers. Haener definitely was. Haener had some drops by his receivers too. So I don't think you can sit there and say, oh, Rattler's number should have been better and Haener was just terrible.
A couple of both guys' drops, and I'm not going to just single out Rattler here, but a couple of both guys' drops were because passes were behind him. So there were a couple passes that should have been caught, but I think almost every drop I saw was because the pass was behind him. Never too far ahead, except for the case when Haener was about to get killed on one play.
Okay, now I got to bring one other moment up that we haven't brought up today. And it's because we're standing here in the northeast corner of the end zone, about 10 yards from where Samson Nacua barely stepped out of bounds. He started way down there by that goalpost.
That's a long way.
Ran all the way to the other side of the field.
Across that's a long way.
Cut all the way back to this side of the field. 106 yards was the official. He probably ran 170 yards on that return because he crisscrossed the field twice. We're talking, of course, about the Titans' missed field goal at the end of the first half. Their backup kicker, whose name escapes me at the moment.
Not Granville.
Halverson. Is it Halverson or something like that?
Whatever.
It was a 57-yard field goal. He comes up short. The Saints had called a timeout to get Samson Nacua back out there as a return man. This is, of course, you see Auburn do it against Alabama in the kick 6 game 13 years ago. He gets the ball right in the back of the end zone, and I really thought Nacua was going to do it. He got through the hard part, and he just had
I did too.
He just had the big bodies chasing him. You could tell he got right here inside the 20, and he was starting to get tired, but he had a lane, and then he just steps out at the 3-yard line. It was the most crestfallen I've ever been in a preseason
to show you
game.
How much preseason doesn't mean. That was by far, and I mean by far, the most exciting play in the preseason and it really didn't mean a whole lot. I don't think it helps or hurts Nacua's cause one way or the other. We were debating on whether Nacua will make this team or not. You think not. I think he's got 50-50 shot, depending on how many receivers they keep. But I don't think that helped or hurt him. But still, yet here we are in preseason talking about that play. And I don't think there's any doubt that's the most exciting play I've seen in 3 weeks.
I mean, it got everybody out of their seats.
Yeah.
It got everybody in the press box out of their seats, which doesn't happen very often. A lot of people went to the bathroom because, it's halftime now, whatever. You missed out on a really exciting play.
Yeah, for sure.
106-yard return that ended in no points because it was the end of the half, and the Saints end up losing by 3. I mean, not that preseason results matter, we know that, but it was a fun play, even if it didn't result in points. So, watching the Saints Insider postgame show after the Saints' 30-27 loss to the Tennessee Titans here in preseason week number 3. I'm Zach Ewing with Jim Derry. We're going to take a quick break and be back with you after this message from Tulane Doctors.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider pregame show, live here from the Caesars Superdome after the Saints' 30-27 loss to the Tennessee Titans, preseason week number 3. Zach Ewing, Jim Derry with you. I want to let you know that this season's postgame coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. When it comes to healthcare, choose a partner that sets the standard. Tulane Doctors are bringing the medicine of tomorrow to the Gulf South today. Find your physician at tulanedoctors.com. Jim, before we let you go, final takeaways here. We know the results in preseason don't really matter, but the Saints finished 1-2. Where do you think this team is headed to the regular season in 2 weeks?
It's hard to gauge anything from this game, really. So it doesn't change my opinion on where I think they are. I still, the fact that no starters were playing except for Trevor Penning and, and on the other side, and we saw Landon Young in there that he may get some playing time. Who knows? Fuanga was playing because I think he missed time last week. So otherwise he wouldn't have been playing either. The fact that you're still trying to figure out who your right tackle is a problem. And that's what my prediction is based on. I was talking upstairs with Dunk about it, and I really thought that if the schedule had been right, they might have had a chance to have a team that could escape their woes on offensive line and maybe eventually win 9 or 10 games. But I just think the schedule's so brutal to get started, and I don't feel any better about this team. In fact, if anything, I feel worse about them now than I did 4 weeks ago. I predicted them 4 weeks ago. I said they were a 6 or 7 win team, and that's kind of where I am right now. I still think they're a 6 or 7 win team, and unless something can happen magically on the offensive line, and it's a shame that it's only one spot that is making me feel that way. Because honestly, I think the rest of the team is either average or above average almost everywhere else, but I think it's the offensive line is so bad that it's going to bring everyone else down, and I think it's going to be a problem for Dennis Allen keeping this team together, frankly.
No preseason optimism here. He's Jim Derry. Datitude coming out tomorrow.
Tomorrow morning, 11 a.m., we will be live.
Datitude podcast. Check it out wherever you get your podcast and on the Datitude YouTube channel. Jim's your host, and he'll be bringing those positive takes all throughout the season, baby.
Keep it positive, brother.
Keep it real. All right, we're going to say goodbye to Jim. We'll bring on Rod Walker. Got a couple of comments here from people. Johnny Irwood said the defense couldn't stop them when it counted. The team will be lucky to finish 9-8. Hopefully Gale will step in and clean house. Hakeem says backup receivers are not good. If Olave or Shaheed go down, you might as well go to St. Aug and grab you a few wide receivers. Rod Walker, Times-Picayune columnist, fresh from the locker room. What was your main takeaway from the Saints loss today?
I think for me the main thing was the quarterback play. I know last week after the 49ers game, I wasn't really sold on the quarterbacks. I just thought that, these guys can't handle it. But I think we saw some things out of Spencer Rattler and Jake Hayner today that makes me feel a little bit more optimistic about those two guys. And, if things go right, we won't even have to see those guys. But Derek Carr played the whole season. But I do like the play of the two backup quarterbacks now more than I have before.
Yeah, I think Spencer Rattler in particular had a really nice day. Hayner had a couple nice throws. Unfortunately for him, one was taken away because of review and one because of penalty. Rattler had the kind of wow plays, and he had, I guess I don't want to use the word casual part of the fan base, but maybe the part that just sees the name, remembers him from the SEC and thinks he's a big name. Like he kind of had them intrigued anyway, and then he makes these plays. Where do you handicap that race? Who's the number 2 quarterback right now?
I still think it's Hayner. I think he's been more consistent throughout camp. And even DA said it, he said the past 7 to 10 days, he felt like Hayner had really stepped up. Some of that didn't translate to the game today. So I think you still give him a slight edge, but I do think it's close. And I think that's a good problem to have. But that throw that he made, that Rattler made, I think is probably the best throw we saw the entire training camp. I mean, through training camp, every preseason game. I mean, it was just a dime. I mean, he just dropped it. He dropped it in a bucket.
It was an NFL level throw for sure, an NFL star level throw. If you could do that a little bit more. El Rey asked, will they carry 3 quarterbacks? We do think we'll talk more about the 53-man roster. In order to use the NFL's emergency quarterback rule, you have to have them all on the 53-man roster. So.
Yeah, they'll use all 3 of them. And one of the things that came up in the postgame was just about, you had that third quarterback, just getting him reps because you want to develop both of those guys. I mean, and it's kind of hard to do that during the season because you basically playing your starter in practice. In practice, you're practicing with your number 1 and your number 2 guy. Number 3 guy doesn't get a whole lot of reps, so it'll be interesting to see whoever the number 3 guy is, how do they try to get him some reps to develop him as well? Because you kind of go through a whole season, they don't really get a whole lot of practice, that third guy.
Yeah, Saints defense did not fare well today. Obviously, hardly any starters played. We did see the 3 safety candidates for that starting spot. They all played, but that was really about it. And they were going up against the Titans' number 1 offense. So how much do you take away or grade some of those backups down for some of those failures?
Yeah, I think some of those guys, especially guys at the end of the roster, I mean, it still was a chance for them to kind of make some noise. I did think Jonathan Abram played well enough where he, I think he may have earned that safety spot beside Tyron. It's kind of him and Will Harris and Jordan Howden. I think Jonathan Abram I give him a slight edge right now. I think he'll be the starter in week 1.
The other thing, I guess, we went in fact, our cover story today in the Times-Picayune was Charlie Smith, the Irish kicker. We didn't see him today. It was Blake Grupe every single time. I suppose that's a sign that it's Grupe. I mean, there's no competition there.
Yeah, he actually said that Charlie dealing with some kind of hamstring injury, so he didn't want to risk it and put him out there. But I do think Grupe took advantage of his opportunity. That he made a 54-yarder, which was huge, and then he made a
39-yarder. I think.
Yeah. So I mean, I think on the podcast, I think I was the only one that had Grupe on the team, and I still think that's the case. I think he'll be the kicker. I think he won the job, and I think what he did today, I don't know if the Saints are willing to roll the dice like they did last year. I just think Grupe probably did just enough to win the job.
My conspiracy theory is that they were just trying to hide Charlie Smith so nobody picks him up off the Saints practice squad.
And that could very well be true as well. But DA did say he was dealing with the injury, but that may have been it.
Because if they can for those who don't know Charlie Smith, because he's from Ireland, he's on the International Player Pathway or Pathway Player, IPP, whatever it is. The Saints can put him on the practice squad and essentially for free. They still have to pay him, but they don't have to use a practice squad spot for him because he's an international player. However, if another team came in and said, we want Smith to be our starting kicker, they could still take him off of the Saints practice squad. And so, maybe you don't want him out there kicking 70-yarders and showing everybody what you've got.
Yeah, there's definitely something to that. I mean, we saw what he did last week at the practice at Tulane. I mean, he nailed a 65-yarder. The place went nuts. So he's a guy that the Saints, they want him. They want to keep both of them if they can, I would think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Speaking of international players, I think the guy who knocked Samson Nacua out of bounds was an international player from the Netherlands or something. I think I heard somebody say.
I have to admit, because preseason football has never been my most exciting sporting event to cover, but I was crestfallen when Samson Nacua was ruled out at the 3. I mean, we were all out of our seats. Like, what a moment that could have been.
It was incredible. He talked to, I did talk to him after that. He was just, I kind of asked him something about, had he heard from his brother Puka yet about the play, and he said he hadn't heard from him, but he feels like they're gonna say, yeah, you're the slowest one out of the brothers. He comes from a pretty big family, and it was an incredible play. I tweeted, I think it's probably the best preseason play I've ever seen. It's one that I'll always remember. And
oh yeah,
how many preseason plays do you actually remember? I will remember that play for a long time.
Now, as far as making the roster, and we'll close with a discussion on roster spots. Does a play like that help you make the – I mean, it sticks in people's mind, but ultimately, like, the coaches are going to have to view all 22 practices and 3 preseason games and make that decision.
Yeah, that play definitely won't get him on the roster. But if he was a guy that's on the edge and he was battling between somebody else, that play could have been the one to push him over. But I don't think he was quite in that kind of spot. So I would say that, no, definitely not enough to get him on.
I have another question here, and I'll let Rod handle this one from Taylor. Did Jacob Cabody take Kendry Miller's roster spot? I think Kendry's probably headed to IR. So he's not taking up a roster spot.
Yeah, I don't think Cabody did. He did play well, and that's kind of what you want to do. But I mean, you look at the entire camp. I just don't know if he had done enough. I think Jordan Mims probably definitely did, though. I thought he played really well today. But yeah, I don't know if they carry like another running back. I mean, I think they have enough. And you look at Alvin and Jamal. Jordan, and you got Tyson, who's also going to get a lot of carries this season. So,
James Robinson looked pretty good today too.
Right. So he's not going to skip over all those guys, I don't think. But he did play well, and that's what you want to do in these games like this. You want to play well, put some film on tape, and maybe somebody else sees you, and you get another shot somewhere, or you get on the practice squad or something. But I think he did do himself a favor today.
Yeah, and he seems like a practice squad guy, and if some other team has a bunch of running back injuries and they see this preseason film, they'll maybe call Cabody's agent, and that will get him a job somewhere else. I just don't know that it'll be here. We'll wrap things up, Rod, with the 53-man roster. I mean, we talked on our podcast on Friday about some of this and some surprise cut candidates. A.T. Perry was a name that came up. He had a pretty good day. Is there anybody today that you think either secured themselves a roster spot or, man, that's it for them?
I think Lou Haley may have really, and I tweeted out on that last punt. That
was a terrible punt.
And I think I tweeted like, hey, he probably cost the Saints this game, and he might have cost himself as well. And I think, the punting battle, he wasn't really consistent last year, and I just think they're going to go in a different direction this year in the punting position. I'm trying to think of who else I thought. There were some receivers that dropped some passes that I was like, that's probably not, and they were probably on the fringe anyway. I just think
Stanley Morgan, dropped one. Bub Means dropped a pass. I don't know if he's on the fringe.
Yeah, he's a guy that I thought may have hurt himself today too. Yeah, I mean, just dropping that pass. Somebody else dropped one. I can't remember who it was. But, yeah, I mean, the drops today were a little concerning. I think once you get past Rashid and Chris Olave, I guess Cedric Wilson,
Cedric Wilson's going to he'll be a starter, yeah.
But, I mean, if Rashid or Chris Olave get hurt this season, I think, you got some issues at receiver as well that we don't really – they kind of get overshadowed by the offensive line issues because they're so glaring. But I think the depth of receivers is another concern for this team.
Yeah, and we had a comment about the receivers earlier. Like, I do think Cedric Wilson seems like a solid guy. He'll be a starter in 11 personnel anyway. But after that, man, if there's any injuries or whatever, and you're throwing nothing against EQ St. Brown or Bub Means or A.T. Perry, but if you're counting on them to make plays, you're probably in a bad spot.
Yeah, and I mean, you just look at Rashid's kind of dealt with his injuries throughout his young career, and so you want to see him try to get through 17 games. But yeah, I mean, I just think to me that's a really big concern for this team that get talked about a lot.
He's Rod Walker. Rod, your column tomorrow morning or on the website tonight on NOLA.com tonight will be about the quarterback situation, so people can look for that. And we'll talk to you later. All right. Thanks, Rod. And up next, we're going to see these guys are lined up now. We'll see who wants to go on next. They're all discussing who's got the earliest deadline. So looks like Matthew Paris, our Saints beat writer, is going to be our next guest on the Saints Insider postgame show. Brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Matt, fresh from the locker room, what are your takeaways from today?
Yeah, it was a really interesting way on how they handled the quarterback derby a little bit with the way that they wanted to do Haener and Rattler. Some cool moments, particularly Samson Nacua, that 106-yard run. We ended up talking to him. He was pretty disappointed he didn't get in there.
I'm pretty disappointed he didn't get in there. I was saying, that's the kind of play that gets you out of your seat in the preseason or not.
he said he'll expect his family to still say that, Puka Nacua is still faster than he is. And he insists that's not the case, but didn't get to show it there all the way. But it was still a heck of a play by him.
Yeah, absolutely. The quarterback situation, Spencer Rattler had kind of the wow plays today. Our consensus from talking to Jim and Rod is that Jake Haener may still be ahead in the race overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that. GA kind of referenced that in the last 7 to 10 days, Haener had taken a big step forward in practice. Now, I do think it matters that that didn't necessarily translate to the games, but I still think that, Jake Haener has a year up on Spencer Rattler. If Derek Carter were to get injured, I think this staff feels probably better about Haener's overall progress. But, it could be a short leash for Haener if it were to ever come to that. But I just think for now we'll see Haener ahead of Rattler, and maybe they'll reevaluate if Rattler takes a big step forward as the season progresses.
Now, our next thing coming up is roster cutdown day on Tuesday. NFL teams have to get down to the 53 active players. And then 16 practice squad players. We got a question here from Zodi. Do you believe the Saints will bring in a right tackle or left guard after cuts on Tuesday? And Matt's the right guy to ask. He wrote a story this weekend, which you can check out on NOLA.com, about possible names to watch as other teams around the league make cuts. And we saw like Savion Ahmed got cut by the Dolphins today. Some notable cuts. Mike White at quarterback. Like you're starting to see these names trickle in. Is that a possibility at some key positions for the Saints?
Yeah, we'll see. I'm really interested to see what the New York Jets do at right tackle, because they brought in Tyron Smith, Morgan Moses. They have this guy, Max Mitchell, who was a 4th rounder in 2022. He could be let go, kind of maybe an interesting name. He has some positional flexibility there. Now, he hasn't been very good at right tackle for the Jets. That's why they were searching for right tackle help and left tackle help to begin with. But I think
sounds familiar.
I think if they want to add like at least a body, maybe he would be kind of an interesting prospect. But besides that, I mean, so many players do get cut every year. I think there were 24 players picked up off the waiver wire last year. So while I think it's a possibility because the Saints always look at that sort of thing, it's not necessarily good to be the savior, the save all for this left guard and especially right tackle.
Yeah. You're not going to find starting caliber players on that waiver wire very often, because if they were that good, they wouldn't have been cut. That's kind of how it goes. Matt, with roster cuts coming up, we talked about this on the pod on Friday. Did you see anybody out there you said they either secured their roster spot today or they've cost themselves that roster spot today?
Well, the guy that I really thought had an interesting day was Equanimous St. Brown. I thought he had really had kind of a quiet camp, but it was just a beautiful release on his touchdown with Spencer Rattler, ran a great kind of corner route. He's a guy that I don't know if he'll make this team, but he definitely has special teams. He can perform on special teams as well. If they want to keep 6 receivers, I think he's made a good case for the 6th. I just don't know. Now it becomes a number standpoint. I'm really interested to see what they do there.
So when you say 6 receivers, we're talking Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Cedric Wilson as your 3rd. Then you're going A.T. Perry, Bub Means, and EQ St. Brown?
Okay. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Bub Means is actually the 4th receiver. A.T. would probably be the 5th. I mean, A.T. had a good catch today. He's had a strong preseason. It's just, for whatever reason, this coaching staff seems to be a little bit down on him. Hasn't had that consistency from practice to practice. Hasn't had a lot of chemistry with Derek Carr, and he's been mostly working with the backup. So he's the guy that I think really needed a big showing today. I thought he had at least one notable play, the catch over here. And so I do think A.T. Perry did enough. But, yeah, wide receiver was the position today that I thought was the most interesting. And then maybe running back, too, with Jordan Mims and Jacob Caboti.
Yeah, we talked briefly about Jacob Caboti. Probably at least got himself a spot on a practice squad or a look around the league.
Yeah, I mean, this is what this kind of game is for, just because, it's an opportunity to put some tape on film, because he hadn't really been having a training camp that I thought was particularly notable, especially to start. Now, Luke pointed out that he had really started to come on, and I agree with that assessment. So, I do think he's a candidate for a practice squad spot. It's just how many do they want to keep, and what happens with Kendre Miller, because God knows what happens with that.
Yeah, he needs a bionic hamstring or something, I guess.
Right.
All right, he's Matthew Paris. We're going to ask one more before we let him get to writing. Matt, where do you think this team is 2 weeks from the regular season based on compared to where you thought they were pre-training camp?
Yeah, well, pre-training camp, I thought they were going to be 9-8, somewhere in there. I haven't set my prediction into Jeff yet. He's doing a roundup of them. I'm floating between 9-8 and 8-9 still. Like, I kind of feel a little bit worse about them after seeing training camp, just with the offensive line. But I do think this defense is going to be very good. I think this offense has some very interesting tendencies from a run perspective, from a play action thing that I think can boost Derek Carr. It's just a matter of, can it all come together at the right time? And I wonder how it's going to be on a consistent week-to-week basis, because I think this team could be a bit up and down like last year.
All right, he's Matthew Pears. He wrote about Trevor Penning. You can read that on NOLA.com/Saints, and we'll let him go finish that up. Thanks, man. All right, and up next will be our other Saints beat writer for the Times-Picayune, and that's Luke Johnson. Luke, fresh from the Saints locker room.
Hey, buddy.
You look like Archie Manning, apparently. That's what one of our YouTube commenters.
Thank you, YouTube commenter, whatever your name is, whoever you are. I appreciate it. I will try to keep up the Archie look. I don't know if I can go with like that Southern genteel vibe, though. Archie's got that in spades. I don't know if I got it.
Yeah, this is New Orleans, though. That's 100% a compliment.
Yeah, I'll take it.
No doubt. All right, takeaways from the third preseason game are always a little bit tough because you don't see starters. We did see Titan starters. We didn't see Saints starters,
right.
And so you're matching up ones versus twos. What did you take away from this one?
Well, I mean, I came away feeling a lot less certain about who the number 2 quarterback is on this roster, because I think I've been really impressed by what we've seen from Jake Haener in practices, and I think he's looked really good and really comfortable running this offense, and he's looked great in those settings. But I mean, this is 6 preseason games for him now, and I don't think he's really had like a head-turning performance in any of those 6 games. And we're talking about Spencer Rattler in 2 out of 3 now. He was really good today. I thought today was, including all the lead up to the season, the mini camp, the OTAs, the training camp practices, and the preseason games. I thought today might have been the best he's looked, period, out of all those. Really impressive. You could see the arm talent play out. The touchdown pass to EQ St. Brown was a perfect throw in between coverage. I might put him as my number 2 quarterback if I was Dennis Allen. I don't know. He's shown it in the games, and I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always come down to, does Dennis Allen and his staff feel like if now a long-term injury is probably a different conversation, because then you talk about bringing in a veteran. But if Derek
I don't know if you do, though.
Maybe not. But if Derek Carr goes out for 2 or 6 or 10 quarters and you need somebody to step in, who do you feel the most comfortable with? And Rattler may be changing that conversation.
I think he might be. I just think that today was he had the really nice the go-ahead drive in the first preseason game, and then today, he led 2 go-ahead drives in the fourth quarter. I really wish I would have gotten to see him run the 2-minute at the end of the game. I understand why Dennis Allen didn't want to do it. At that point, he'd gotten kind of more plays out of Spencer Rattler, and then he wanted to kind of tip the scales back and see what Jake Haener could do in that setting for evaluation purposes. But man, just the way those first couple drives went with Rattler in there, I kind of wanted to see what he could do with the game on the line in the last 2 minutes of the fourth quarter. I kind of wish I would have gotten to see it. So, I just think he was really impressive today. I think that's as good as he's looked in a Saints uniform.
All right, let's kind of rapidly go through some of the other takeaways. The Saints defense, obviously, was 2s and 3s against the Titans, and it looked like it.
Yeah, I don't know if I really can take away much from that. I think it's hard to even isolate one player out of that, because you're, as a defense, you're relying on all 11 to get the job done. So there wasn't, I don't feel like a lot of one-on-one exploited mismatches. It was really kind of a complete system failure for much of that first, 18, 20 minutes of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So really tough to take anything away from that. I think their D-line kind of looked overmatched against the Titans' first-team offensive line. I think their secondary looked overmatched and kind of blowing some coverages. I just kind of flush all that because I think the starters have looked really good this preseason.
In the kicking game, we saw, first of all, one of the great almost in NFL preseason history. It happened right here.
Samson Nacua. Yeah. First of all, all-time interview from that guy in the middle of camp. And when I saw him, setting himself up for a 109-yard kick return for a touchdown, I was like, yes, get to blast this story out again. Let's go.
Yeah.
Referees hate fun. They marked him out at the 3. That was a lot of fun, though. I clocked it, my stopwatch, after I was watching the replay. He was running for almost 20 seconds on that play.
I mean, he probably ran for over 150 yards when you count going back and forth.
It was 106 yards total from start to end of it, and he was running right to left, back to the right. So yeah, that was super exciting. Kind of wish I would have gotten to see him punch it in there. So you don't get to see those plays very often.
The $1 million question, at least $1 million for Puka Nacua, is not Puka Nacua, Samson Nacua. Did that help him?
No. I mean, look, it was one really, really fun, exciting play, but like this, all of this stuff is like the full practices, games. Are you showing up for your meetings? Are you getting the offense down? I mean, it's everything. It's a full evaluation. One play, especially for somebody like Samson Nacua, is not going to make it, unfortunately. And even afterwards, Dennis Allen's like, well, he should have scored on the play. And he was, I mean, in some respects, he was right. Look, it was a kick. It was a place kick.
Yeah.
So the 11 guys on the field are a kicker, a punter, like 7 offensive linemen, and a couple tight ends versus a bunch of fast guys. So like those plays should result in.
He did all the hard part. He just didn't finish.
He just didn't finish, which is a shame because he's an A+ dude.
Yeah. So the receiver conversation, we just had it with Matt. Equimania St. Brown had a good day. Did he make the roster today?
That's a really tough one. Yeah, he was somebody I was really kind of looking forward to seeing. Yeah, I think he does some nice stuff in the run game in particular. He's a big body guy, and they don't have a lot of those on this roster outside of Cedric Wilson. But he missed a big chunk of camp, and that's a big chunk of their evaluation. They got some other guys who I think merit consideration. I think Bub Means is squarely in the mix. I think they got to make a decision on A.T. Perry one way or another. I think they feel pretty solid about 3 guys in this wide receiver room, and beyond that, it's really up in the air. So I don't know if it's fair to say he made the team today because there's a lot of stuff he missed too.
One more note on special teams: Blake Grupe takes every kick. I know Da said in the postgame Charlie Smith's got a hamstring issue. That was the Jeff Duncan curse. You had a story on him in today's paper.
That one. All right, I'm going to throw out a conspiracy theory.
You may be repeating what I already said to Rob. But go ahead. They hiding Charlie Smith?
It feels like they're hiding him.
That's what I think.
They had opportunities to kick long field goals today, and he is a completely unknown quantity, right? Like nobody knows what he is, as he's attempted 1 kick, not even an extra point. He's attempted 1 field goal in 3 preseason games. And Grupe, I think, has attempted 8 or 9, including extra points. So I mean, like I'm probably just like I should probably just go home and wrap up my tinfoil hat and all that. But like
I don't think it's that crazy though.
I mean, like they're the only ones who really know what they have in Charlie Smith, and maybe they just don't want to give other teams ammunition in case they decide they want to try to stash him on the practice squad.
We'll find out if somebody's reading Duncan columns and they'd sign him off the practice squad.
Or just like I know for a fact that NFL teams have people in-house who look at beat reporters' tweets.
Sure.
So they'll see the tweets of Charlie Smith kicking 65-yarders. Now, they might not see the tweets of him missing the extra points. Does a team want to bring a kicker on who to be there on their active roster, be their game day kicker who they don't know exactly how consistent he is? I don't know. But it just seems unfair that we only got to see him kick 1 ball in the preseason.
Yeah. As far as roster spot goes, though, it looks like Blake Grupe is going to make the team at this point. He's going to be.
I think so. But if they can get Charlie Smith onto the practice squad, which I feel probably pretty safe, probably. The problem is, like, if you feel really good about Charlie Smith's potential and you think that he could be an excellent kicker down the road, like, do you really want to risk it? We had this discussion on the pod the other day. It's like both of those things have risk. Right, you sign him to the active roster, and he's there, and he's your kicker. You're gonna have to go through the ups and downs of a super inexperienced guy playing at the NFL level. What's he gonna look like when the game's on the line, in a game that counts, with people's livelihoods on the line, and he's got to kick a game-winning field goal. Nobody knows what that's gonna look like, but you can also see the talent. Like I mean, the guy's clearly belongs in the NFL. So it's a risk. Any way you look at it, I don't want to be in their shoes making that decision. But Grupe, I think, has stabilized after kind of a rough patch in the middle of preseason, the middle of camp, and he's looked really good in the last couple of weeks.
All right, he's Luke Johnson, beat writer for the Times-Picayune. Read his stuff at NOLA.com/Saints. We'll be on the podcast after Cutdown Day, and our thanks to Luke.
All right, my pleasure. I'll talk to y'all later.
And next up,
somebody said I look like Archie Manning.
I don't get it either.
Do you think he looks like Archie Manning?
Archie Manning? Are you kidding me? That might be the worst comparison I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, and you've heard some bad ones.
Yeah. That's incredible.
There goes Archie. He's Jeff Duncan, columnist for the Times-Picayune. This is our Saints Insider postgame show brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Wrapping things up here, Jeff, give me a guy who really helped his case today and a guy who hurt his case today.
You mean as far as like just making the roster?
Let's say just making the roster to start with.
Well, I think Anthony Orji was a guy like in that depth on the linebacker position, played very well again. He's played well all camp. I think they got some tough decisions to make at backup linebacker, and this is a guy that's kind of flashed throughout camp. I thought he played really well today, so I like what he did. I obviously like Spencer Rattler's game. I thought he showed a lot of – I think the key word for him is poise. He seems like a gamer to me, a kind of guy like when the lights are on, he comes through. There's certain people that have that quality, and I think players believe in him. Now, they're going against backups, qualifying, but I like what I see from him. And then players that hurt their cause, I think Trevor Penning got a long look. I know Matt's writing about him tomorrow. He got a long look because they want to see what they got in him, and I was not impressed. He really struggled in pass protection, as he's done throughout camp, and I think they've got some tough decisions to make at right tackle. I'm not sure the right tackle that is going to end the season is on the roster right now.
Is the right tackle who's going to start the season as the starter on the roster?
Yeah, well, I think probably – look, here's the thing. Everybody says the obvious, right? Go out and find somebody in the waiver wire. There's – tackles are maybe the hardest position to find in the NFL next to quarterback. There are just not a lot of big guys out there athletic enough to block these incredible athletes on the edge. So they're a premium, and nobody has a premium on tackles. They're just not extra ones sitting around. So whatever you find is going to probably be a lot like an Oli Udoh, a guy that's
just a guy.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to find much unless you can somehow swing some kind of trade or something. But at this point, I think that seems like very remote. I think that's true almost every position. I do think they could find a running back on the market because there is a surplus of those guys. But as far as a tackle that's going to help this team, I wouldn't count on it.
You've talked a lot about how much you like this quarterback room.
Mm-hmm.
Derek Carr, you're comfortable with as a starter, and both backups I thought had their moments today. Spencer Rattler probably had more of the wow moments. Jake Haener, from all accounts, has been more consistent throughout camp. If you had to make the call, who's QB2 in 2 weeks?
I think Haener would be my pick. Whether they pick him or not, I don't know. The upside on Rattler is pretty intriguing. You can see the passing ability. But if you take the entirety of the training camp, every practice, every preseason game, everything, not recency bias, but just the entire body of work, I think Haener's outperformed him. He's been more consistent. Now, what the coaches might see is a young player like Rattler, who obviously was going to be behind Haener early on and is coming on. And maybe they see that and feel like, hey, he's eventually going to pass him. But I think right now, if you had to ask me who's outperformed the other one, I would say Haener.
Yeah. Wrapping things up on the Saints Insider postgame show with Jeff Duncan. Jeff, your sort of final takeaway on this preseason, who's compared to how you felt on July 25th when you were sitting on the beaches of Nice and to now, you've seen quite a few practices. You've seen 3 preseason games. Are you more optimistic or less optimistic than you were a month ago?
Can I hedge a little bit? I'm going to hedge, and I don't like hedging at all. But I feel better about the defense. Okay. I do like the improvement along the defensive line. That had to be done in the offseason. So I think their defense is going to, again, be a strength of the team. Maybe top 5-10 kind of defense. I'm still got major questions, maybe even more questions about the offense than I did. I just haven't seen enough. I know there's been some flashes. We've seen some improvement in some areas in the running game, but there's just so many concerns with me up front, and especially with the depth behind the starters, that even if they have this great new scheme, Derek Carr's more comfortable, he's playing better, none of it's going to matter, Zach, if they can't block anybody up front. And once you get into game plan week, into a game, everyone is going to target their weaknesses in the line. And they got 2 of them right now that are going to get targeted. These are really good coaches in this league, and they know how to game plan. And I just feel like that's an area that's going to linger all year long and could undermine their ability offensively to do much.
We're going to wrap up with one more question and one more concern for the Saints, because I don't know if it's Stefan or Stefan from Australia. Like what? It's like 7 a.m. there or something. So he stayed up all night to watch and wants to know, what do you think about the drops? There were quite a lot today. And you can comment on the drops, but like the depth at receiver is also a pretty big concern.
Yeah, well, that's what I would say is that's another concern. There are 2 lead receivers on this team, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, pretty established guys. We've seen the potential there. Neither one of them is the biggest guy in the world. Both of them have been nicked up and injured in their careers. After you get past those 2 guys, you don't have a lot to hang your hat on. The drops are concerning. That was something that was hung on Bub Means at Tennessee when he came out of the draft. Great physical ability, but really struggled with consistency catching the ball. We've seen that throughout camp here. Hard to trust him going into the regular season right now. But I agree. I think that's an area that they could maybe look to upgrade, maybe bring in a veteran guy that could just be a little more consistent while they develop some of these younger guys. I think that's what they thought EQ St. Brown would be. He hasn't really stepped forward. He had a great catch today, but I think that's an area of concern.
Well, if you had to pick today, let's say the Saints do decide to keep 6 receivers. We've got the 3 guys we think will be starters, at least in 11 personnel. That's Shaheed, Olave, and Cedric Wilson. Then is it A.T. Perry, St. Brown, and the rookie from Pittsburgh, Bub Means, or is you going somewhere else?
No, that's kind of exactly what I would say right now. And I think that's a position area or a depth chart that's going to continue to evolve and revolve. I don't think that will stay the same all season long. I think there's just too much inconsistency behind the top, basically 3 receivers.
All right, that's it for the preseason and our Saints Insider postgame show. Roster cuts on Tuesday. We're going to have a live reaction show, so check that out on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Until then, thanks to Jim Derry, Rod Walker, Matthew Paris, Luke Johnson, and Jeff Duncan for stopping by. Norman Bell is our producer, or Patrick McGee was our producer. Norman Bell, our cameraman today. Our thanks to them as well, and we will catch you next time on the Saints Insider.
We are Tulane doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.